contract between the parties. So the lender has for the loan application, the address, the estimate of property value, and the amount of the mortgage loan required. How much is the borrower asking for? Once the lender has these 6 pieces of information, then they have the loan application, and that's when RESPA steps in and gives the lender some rules. So we have our loan application, and RESPA says, okay, within 3 days of loan application, lender, we need you to send the borrower a know before you owe booklet. That know before you owe booklet walks through the contract to closing process, information to the borrower about their loan product, what it is they're taking on that 30-year commitment. RESPA also requires within 3 days of loan application that the lender send the borrower a loan estimate of their settlement costs. Gives them a breakdown of their settlement costs. Y'all, this is huge. This is huge post-housing market crash. It was in some cases those fraudulent lenders that put us here to begin with. Y'all, sometimes there were borrowers getting ready to take on a 30-year payment and didn't know their monthly payment until they were sitting at the attorney's office. That make your heart flutter a little bit? That make you a little nervous? It should. That's not how we protect consumers. That's not how we protect borrowers. And that was part of what Dodd-Frank said. That mess has got to stop. People need to be educated about their loan, which means they need time to consider that number. I'm telling you at settlement, oh, by the by, this is your interest rate and this will be your monthly payment for the next 30 minutes. Just sign here. That's all you got to do is sign here. It was crazy. It was crazy. So Trid says, RESPA says, yeah, that stuff has to stop. We're going to send a loan estimate within 3 days of loan application. Keep in mind, this is an estimate, which means these aren't the final end-all be-all numbers. Some things change from the loan estimate to closing. RESPA took this a step further and they said, we need to regulate the changes. So some change tolerance limits. RESPA says there's some things that absolutely cannot change from the loan estimate to closing. Those things that can't change are the lender charges. Whatever they quote for the application fee, origination fee, funding fee, MIP, whatever the lender quotes the borrower, once they're out there, once they've been quoted, then that can't change. Zero tolerance. RESPA allows for a 10% tolerance up or down for settlement services for which the borrower cannot shop for. An example of a settlement service that the borrower cannot shop for is the appraiser. The lender selects the appraiser. The buyer has no choice whatsoever who does the appraisal because the appraisal is the property of the lender. But whatever the lender quotes, they only have a 10% wiggle room. And then things that can and often do change are things out of the lender's control. So at the time of loan application, like we can guesstimate what the home inspector will charge, but we don't know until we get an invoice from the home inspector. We don't know what the surveyor is going to charge, the pest inspector, all those due diligence people that are helping the buyer get through this with their inspections and investigations. We can estimate, and lenders often overestimate these charges. Because here's the deal. The numbers from the loan estimate compared to the closing disclosure, it's okay if those numbers go down. The problem is when they are more than expected. And that's why we have these tolerance limits. So it's been my experience that lenders often overestimate these charges And then when we get to closing, guess what? There's good news. Your buyer doesn't know as much as what they thought at the loan estimate. By the way, let me go back just for 1 second. This 3 days within loan application, the borrower has to sign off saying that they've received these things. That's part of the RESPA requirement. I will say most of our lenders today are using a software that they send you messages through the software, but they don't send you information. So they'll send you an email that says, you need to log into your account and see this know before you owe booklet. Once you're in the account, you need to sign off on it. But it shows you like when they viewed it, when they signed it, that kind of good thing. It's kind of like our doctor's offices these days. They're not going to send you an email with your results. They're going to send you an email that says log into your account to view your results. So it's similar. It's just a software where they can big brother you and know when you've looked at it, know when you've viewed it. And that's just for RESPA requirements to make sure we're within those 3 days of loan application. Turn with me, if you will, in your books to page 561. So on 561, we're looking at a sample loan estimate. So you can see I have the applicant's name, the property, the sales price. Then we have the loan information. It's a 30-year conventional loan. The rate lock has happened. It's already locked in. There's your loan amount, interest rate, monthly principal and interest. And the question out to next all of these is, can this amount increase after closing? Yes or no? It's pretty simple, pretty easier for the borrower to see. Is there a prepayment penalty? Yes or no? Is there a balloon payment? Yes or no? Then we have our projected payments. Again, we're only 3 days within loan application, so we don't know who the insurance company is going to be yet. We may not even know the taxes yet. We haven't calculated the taxes yet. So it's just an estimate, letting this borrower know within 3 days of loan application that their estimated PITI is $1,050. There's your estimated closing costs, and then the very bottom line there is your estimated cash to close. Within 3 days of loan application, this borrower knows that their estimated cash to close is $16,054. It gives them time to look at this and make sure they're okay instead of seeing it for the first time at settlement. Very, very stressful. Turn over to page 562. 562 is the breakdown of the estimated cash to close. So they just don't say you'll have to bring $16,054. They show you where that came from. They break that down. If you were to whip your calculator out and add all that up, you would get our estimated cash to close, $16,054. And then additional information about the loan. So the loan estimate, and yes, there can and often are changes because it's just an estimate. It's not the end all be all yet. Questions on our loan estimate? The other document that was integrated, the other document that was consolidated, one was the loan estimate. The other new document we have is the closing disclosure. And actually, RESPA requires 2 closing disclosures. Remember, RESPA's purpose is to protect the consumer. And the consumer in this transaction is the borrower. It's the buyer. I'm not going to say RESPA doesn't care about the seller, but let's be frank. RESPA doesn't care about the seller. They already have a loan originated. We care about the one that is originating a new loan. So because of that, RESPA often requires two closing disclosures, one for the seller and one for the buyer. RESPA doesn't care if the buyer sees the seller's numbers. What they do care about is if the seller doesn't see the buyer's numbers. So that's the point of two closing disclosures. The lender does not prepare the seller's CD. The closing attorney prepares the seller CD. The lender's relationship is with the borrower, is with the buyer. They have nothing to do with the seller. So one CD is for the seller. The other CD, then, the one that comes with rules, is for the borrower. The lender will prepare the borrower's closing disclosure. And RESPA puts guidelines on this as well. RESPA says that the lender needs to deliver the borrower's closing disclosure 3 business days prior to settlement. Business days do not include Sunday and national holidays. That's if we can do personal delivery. So 3 days if the lender physically hands it to the borrower, or 3 days if they send it through that software. This shows that they viewed it, shows that they opened it, and requires them to sign it. Buyer's agents, this is probably a big place that we can be involved to make sure that settlement isn't delayed. I'm going to say the week prior to settlement, you are on the phone with your buyers talking about, you are about to get a very important email from the lender. I need you to stop what you're doing and acknowledge that email. Because if we don't have the buyer's delivery, the buyer's acceptance within 3 business days prior to settlement, settlement's delayed. This is a TRID law. This is a federal law. And settlements get delayed if the borrower doesn't have this thing 3 days prior to settlement. If delivery is not personal, if they snail mail it, for example, then we have to allow 6 business days. But most lenders I know are using that software. All lenders I know are using that software, and we get it in within 3. The delivery of the borrower's closing disclosure is directly from the lender to the borrower. This is one place I cannot assist in delivering or communication. RESPA requires this delivery directly from the lender to the borrower. And anytime we count days, may they be closing disclosure days, dates in the contract, whatever. Anytime we count days, day 1 is the day after receipt or execution. So today's what, Tuesday? If your buyer gets their CD today, Wednesday is day 1, Thursday is 2, Friday is 3. If we get the CD today, there is no possible way to close before Friday. We cannot, or I should say, we must allow those 3 days. Mark my words. You will have a closing delayed because of this rule right here. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. The lenders, the attorney, it is what it is here. So again, we can help keep those gears going by making sure our buyers understand that they've got to get on this, or else they'll delay their own closing. Questions on this? So the CD comes out 3 days prior to settlement. It gives the buyer the opportunity to review it. And if they have any questions, it gives them time to ask. Remember, this is much different than what it used to be. Again, they may not be seeing this thing for the first time until they sat down at settlement. And I think we can all agree that's just not fair. That's not fair. This person's getting ready to take on a 30-year commitment. And we're not going to let you see your numbers until it's the day of settlement. So we can protect the consumers by educating them. This CD that comes from the lender 3 days prior to settlement may or may not be the final CD. We're close, but things can still change. Things can still happen to cause changes. Any change will require a new CD. But there's only 3 changes that require a new 3-day count, a new 3-day review. If the APR changes from the first borrower closing disclosure, then we'll issue a new CD and we have a new 3-day count. If a prepayment penalty is added, issue a new CD and we need a new 3-day count. Or if the basic loan product changes, the borrower changes from conventional to FHA, for example, new CD, new 3-day count. All changes require a new CD. These are the only changes that require a new 3-day count. You and I have help or are helpful in reviewing these closing disclosures for accuracy. We'll talk about our process in just a bit. The attorneys are making sure these things are accurate. The lenders, the thinking is the more sets of eyes we can have on these closing disclosures, the better chance for accuracy we're going to have. So it's really common, I don't know why, but it's really common to review a closing disclosure and find a mistake. In which case I have a duty to call the attorney and report the mistake. Maybe my commission's wrong. Maybe I forgot to submit an invoice. Maybe taxes aren't calculated right. Reviewing these things for accuracy is the math. And again, we're not doing full-blown CDs. All we're going to have to do is figure out how much your buyer has to bring to closing. But knowing what's the debit to the buyer, what's a credit to your buyer. So look with me, if you will, on page 566. And 566 is our closing disclosure. We could compare that to the loan estimate that we just looked at 561. So comparing this with your loan estimate, again, there's the closing information, 566. Closing information, settlement agent, there's your borrower, seller, and lender. There's your loan information. And then there's that loan amount again, interest rate, monthly principal and interest. If we flip back to 561, we can see that that didn't change. That was the same as what we were told in the estimate. My projected payments, I was told in my estimate of $1,050. Now that we're at the final, we're at $1,050.26. That wasn't too bad, was it? I don't think anybody's going to get excited about 26 cents a month. There's your estimated taxes, insurance and assessments, closing costs. And then check out the cash to close on the closing disclosure. Remember the loan estimate, we told the borrower you got to bring $16,054 to buy this house. And now that we're here, they only have to bring $14,147.26. That's $2,000, give or take. That's good news to the buyer. Yes, I told you 16, but now that we're here, you only have to bring 14. It's okay for those numbers to come down from the loan estimate because that benefits the buyer. That benefits the borrower. The issue is if those numbers go up. 567 breaks down the closing costs. 568 on the left-hand side shows us our buyer's debits, our buyer's credits, and then the bottom line down there is our cash to close from the borrower, and that's how we got that $14,147. This is a sample of a real world closing disclosure. You guys are just being introduced to it. When you come see me in post licensing, we're going to do a full blown closing disclosure. So in post licensing, we are going to calculate pages 567 and 568. You don't have to do that yet. Gives you something to look forward to. Post licensing. The other thing I like about the CD, go back to 568. And the top part there, the calculating cash to close. And it goes through and it tells the borrower, this is what you were told with the loan estimate. This is what you were told with the final. Did this change? Yes or no? It's a handy dandy side by side comparison to review what they were told at the loan estimate and what we have now. And again, they have 3 days to make sure they're good with these figures, make sure they don't have any questions. You and I are reviewing this as well. Again, more on our process when we get back. But you and I are reviewing this as well for accuracy. Buyers and sellers don't know how this thing is calculated. That's not their job. They hired an agent to help them verify their information for accuracy. And that's what we're doing by reviewing these CDs. Who can remind me what that A in old car stands for? What's the A in old car? Yep. That A in old car is accounting for their funds. And their funds include how much does your buyer have to bring to closing and how much is your seller going to hopefully get. This is our duties to our clients. So let's bring this home. What's all this mean for us? Well, we got a commission rule, or license law actually. But per the Real Estate Commission, we're going to be held responsible for the accuracy of information that we should reasonably know. I have a duty to verify pages 567 and 568 for accuracy. I'm not privy to all of the numbers on these 2 pages, but I am responsible for reviewing what I should know. Can I make sure that the sales price is accurate? Can I make sure that the due diligence fee, earnest money deposit, seller pay closing costs, don't we have all that in a sales contract, an agreement between the buyer and the seller? So when it comes to reviewing these things for accuracy, the first thing I want you to do is pull out your contract and make sure the numbers in the contract and any amendments to the contract match what is on the closing disclosure. If any of our inspectors are going to allow your buyer to pay for their services at settlement, so maybe the home inspector allows the buyer to pay, the home inspector is sending you the invoice so you can send it to the closing attorney so they can make sure it's on the CD. If you have the invoice, can't you verify that that number on the CD is correct? If you've received that invoice, we can make sure that that number on the CD is accurate, that it's correct. So keep in mind, you guys, I'm not responsible for the whole thing, but I am responsible for what I should reasonably know. If I've touched it, if I've seen it, if it's in my email, then I should reasonably know, and I'm responsible for verifying it. I wish I could tell you guys if you find a mistake, but I feel more accurately, I need to say when you find a mistake. Humans prepare these things, period. Humans make mistakes. The thinking is the more sets of eyes we have on these closing disclosures, the better chance for accuracy that we have. Remember, What we're looking at in your book, you got buyers and sellers all lumped together. But in the real world, we're going to have two CDs, one specifically for the seller, another one specifically for the buyer. Teammate reviewed closing disclosure, y'all, not 2-3 weeks ago. I don't know how things happen, but they had a charge to the buyer for the home warranty, not once, not twice, but 3 times. They charged the buyer for the home warranty 3 times. How did that happen? I don't know. But you know what? It happened. Y'all going to verify your commission? You're darn right you're going to verify your commission. And if you find a mistake in your commission, aren't you going to pick up the phone and call somebody and make sure that commission gets corrected? That same kind of sense of urgency with our commission is expected with our buyers and sellers. Everybody good with what we're saying? Buyers and sellers don't know how to review these things. This is why they have us. So this is why we are introducing you to this math and then doing a deep dive on it in post-licensing. And you'll do these things in the real world too at your first closing. Your BIC will help you go through with these for a few. But understand, I'm not going to get in trouble for reporting it. Even if you're wrong, you make mistakes too, right? It's not just the paralegal that makes mistakes. You make mistakes too. So if you think you find a mistake, you need to report it. You will get in trouble for not reporting it. You could face disciplinary action because we didn't give our buyers and sellers old card. They didn't get that full A in accounting. License law 93A-6 answers the question, what can I get disciplined for? What can my license get disciplined for? So specifically A14, it says failure to review these closing disclosures. 93A-6 is the license law I have in the Julie folder for you guys to look at. So just a little taste of what we're going to get when we get back. I'm going to end here today, but don't go anywhere just yet because we got a couple things to address. First off, as a reminder, we get a break. We don't have class on Thursday. We don't have class next week. How many of you feel very overwhelmed right now? How many of you feel like you have a lot of information? How many of you feel like you're swimming? Guess what? You get almost 2 weeks. We go 2 weeks without seeing each other. So you guys have time. And I encourage you to use our time off to get yourself caught up. You all know how you did on the midterm. You all know how seriously you took the midterm. You all know. Use the midterm. Did you get the report? Did you get the email report that showed you the breakdown of your areas of weakness for the first 10 units? Use that to your advantage. We've been through, we're in 21 now, which means when we come back, unit 17 is our appraisal unit. 11 is our landlord and tenant. 12 is property management. 19 is federal fair housing. And then we jump into license law and commission rule. With license law and commission rule, we asked you guys to read the comments. So in the online learning system under license law and commission rule, those comments will get you ready for when we get to that section. Y'all don't worry about units 13, 18, and 16. We'll blow through those in a very short amount of time. From those 3 units, you can expect to see 1, maybe 2 test questions. So 13, 18, 16, and 1 are not what's stressing you out. So we're near the end when we get back. We got what, 1, 2, about 2.5 more weeks when we get back, 3 weeks when we get back. I don't, Latoya. I don't have those problems. The other thing I want you guys to look at to get you ready for our math in 21 when we get back, turn with me in your book, please, to page 587 and 588. 587 and 588. This is kind of our cheat sheet, because when we get back, we're going to figure out how much your buyer has to bring to closing, which means we need to know things that are debits to the buyer, things that are credits to the buyer. We need to know things that are debits to the seller and things that are credits to the seller. So I encourage you guys to look at 587 and 588. Maybe do yourself a breakdown. Take a piece of paper and write buyer at the top. Draw a line down the middle of it and allow you to see these things. Go through 587 and 88 and identify the things that are a debit to the buyer and the things that are a credit to the buyer. So we can see specifically the debit are the buyer's charges. Credits are money that they have coming in. And then go through that same little exercise with the seller. Because here's the deal. We're calculating how much your buyer has to bring to closing, but would y'all put it past them on your test to throw a seller debit at you, expecting you to not know that the seller pays that, not the buyer, and include it? So we need to know both parties' debits and credits, and it all starts with 587 and 588. So we're looking ahead, getting prepared. I'm always available for questions. Feel free to shoot me an email would be best the next couple weeks. I may not get back to you immediately, but I will get back to you as soon as I can. Please use this time to your advantage. Questions? Y'all have a great time off. Use this time to advantage. We'll see you. I don't know. When do I see you again? November 5th. We'll see you guys on November 5th. Have a good week or two. Thank you.